I'm Noah Reyes. I'm 31 years old, and up until a few months ago, I would have told you my younger brother was my best friend. Liam and I were only 2 years apart, and growing up we were inseparable. Matching bikes, secret handshakes, inside jokes about our mom's weird lasagna. Then Liam met her. Her name is Celeste, and ever since she came into the picture, it's like my brother got swallowed whole. The last time I saw him before everything exploded, he was wearing that dazed, agreeable look he gets whenever she speaks. You know the one, like he's trying to stay awake during a meeting, but also afraid of getting called out. That's what our catch-ups had turned into. Half conversations constantly interrupted by Celeste's texts, her calls, her new social media content calendar. "Babe, can you grab the tripod?" "Noah, we can't stay too long. We have a call with the florist." The thing is, I tried. I really tried. I told myself she was just intense, detail-oriented, a little bossy. Maybe she'd chill out after the honeymoon phase. Spoiler, she didn't. What started with her choosing where Liam went for dinner turned into her picking who he could spend time with. And slowly my brother started disappearing. Not all at once, just in little pieces, until there were only fragments of the old Liam left filtered, staged, and approved for her personal brand. So when I got the save the date card in the mail, I should have known it wasn't going to be simple. But I didn't know it would be war. The envelope was thick, cream-colored wax sealed, like it had been couriered from a royal palace. The front said, "Experience our love," which already gave me hives. Inside wasn't an invitation, it was a contract. Destination wedding, Amalfi Coast. 5 days. Every guest had to pay for a mandatory wedding immersion experience. And not just flights and hotel rooms, no. This was Celeste's wedding. That meant $200 per guest wedding package, welcome dinner on a cliffside vineyard, spa day bonding ritual with the bridal party, yacht excursion with custom swimwear required, farewell brunch with monogrammed mimosas. Oh, and participation in every event was mandatory. I stared at it for a long time, trying to convince myself I was reading it wrong. Like maybe it was just flowery marketing language. But then I saw the kicker. Only fully committed guests. Those who complete the entire immersive experience will be granted access to the ceremony. In other words, if you didn't pay up and show up for all 5 days, you weren't welcome. I thought my parents would be livid. Instead, my mom just sighed and said, "It's a lot, but it's Liam's big day. We should support him." My dad muttered something about weddings being cults now, and went back to his crossword. But then I hit the second page. Yes, there was a second page. A non-disclosure agreement. Buried under flowery script and faux wax illustrations was a legal clause requiring guests to sign an NDA. No photos, no posts, no sharing of personal opinions about the wedding on any public or private channel. Oh, and you were forbidden from discussing the cost with anyone. Violating the NDA meant potential legal recourse. At first I thought it was a joke, but then I called Liam, and he said, "Yeah, Celeste just doesn't want the experience getting diluted. You know how it is." "No, Liam, I don't know how it is. Because we grew up on frozen waffles and backyard barbecues, not curated lavender-scented events with media embargoes. Just sign it." He said, "It's not a big deal." Except it was. It was a massive deal, because it wasn't just the NDA. Bridesmaids had to buy $800 dresses from a custom line. Groomsmen had to wear designer suits with embroidered cuffs, also self-funded. Every hour of every day was scheduled. There was even a social conduct agreement reminding us to avoid topics that lower vibrational frequencies. My cousin Rosa said it best in the family group chat. "So we're paying thousands of dollars for the privilege of being unpaid extras in their influencer wedding." And things went downhill fast. One aunt refused to go on principle. My uncle said he wouldn't be bossed around by a woman who once said the family's Thanksgiving centerpiece was aesthetically incoherent. Group chat on fire. People were backing out left and right. Celeste posted a vague quote on Instagram. "Those who truly support love don't count costs. They count blessings." With a picture of her and Liam posed beside a Vespa wearing matching white linen outfits. I didn't say anything at first. But then my mom called. "Can't you just go?" she asked tiredly. "For Liam's sake." I wanted to say yes, but every part of me screamed no, not because of the cost. Not really. Not even because of the NDA. Because it wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a dictatorship in white chiffon, and my Liam, wasn't in control of anything. I sat with it for a few days, went for long walks, reread the invitation, replayed every time Celeste interrupted me mid-sentence, every family dinner where she corrected Liam's stories or gently pushed his plate away like a mother would a toddler's. Then I made the call. He picked up on the second ring. "I'm not coming," I said. There was a long silence. Then he asked, "Because of the money?" "No," I replied. "Because I don't want to be part of something that treats love like a brand rollout." He didn't say anything for a while. Then quietly, "Okay, if that's how you feel." But I could hear it in his voice. He wasn't done. He wasn't even close. An hour later, I got a message from Celeste. It was 4 paragraphs long. A masterclass in guilt-tripping and passive aggression. "I welcomed you into our life," she wrote. "I trusted you to be Liam's support. And now over something so small, you're choosing to humiliate him." She ended with, "I hope one day you understand what it means to be family." I left her on read, and then the phone calls started. The texts, the DMs. Friends of the family reaching out on Liam's behalf. Cousins asking me to just suck it up. My aunt even asked if I could at least go to the brunch, but the avalanche was already rolling. By the end of the week, half the guest list had dropped out, and that was before the Reddit post. I didn't post the Reddit thread to go viral. I just needed to breathe. It was a Tuesday night, and I was sitting on my couch with a bottle of wine and more frustration than I could carry. So I wrote it all out, just the facts. The wedding invite, the absurd price tag, the NDA, the blowout in the family chat. I changed the names. No locations. Just the truth. I didn't expect more than a few comments. By morning, it had exploded. Thousands of upvotes. Hundreds of comments. People were floored. "This sounds like a cult," one said. Another wrote, "Run your brothers being held hostage in a Pinterest board." My inbox lit up with messages from strangers and distant relatives who had clearly put 2 and 2 together. Everyone had the same reaction. "This is insane." And that was before the post got shared in the private family Facebook group. I didn't even know that group still existed. My mom used to post birthday collages in there back when she thought stickers and glitter fonts were peak aesthetic. Now, it was a war zone. Cousins were tagging each other. Aunts were arguing, and someone I still don't know who screenshot the Reddit post and sent it directly to Celeste. That's when things took a sharp left turn. Celeste didn't respond right away. At first, she did that thing where she pretended she hadn't seen it. You know, the type silent treatment via carefully curated Instagram stories. She posted a photo of her yoga mat and lemon water with the caption, "Centering myself. Choosing peace. Letting go of negative energy." Translation: she was about to go nuclear. Sure enough, 3 hours later my phone buzzed. It was a message from Liam. I hadn't heard from him since the call. Noah had read, "You crossed a line." I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed, "I didn't use your name, didn't say anything untrue. I just told the story." His reply came quick. "You embarrassed us. You embarrassed her." That's when I realized he was more upset that Celeste felt exposed than the fact that half our family wasn't coming to his wedding. I was no longer the brother. I was a PR problem. Later that night, my mom called again. Her voice was brittle, like she'd been crying. She said, "We're sabotaging the wedding," she whispered. "Celeste." "Yes. Liam, too. He won't answer my texts now. Says we're not being supportive enough." I felt my stomach turn. Not because of the words, but because my mom sounded like she believed them. For years, she'd been the peacemaker. The "let's all just get along" type. Now she sounded defeated. She didn't even try to defend me. Just asked if I'd please take down the post for Liam's sake. I told her no. The silence on the other end said everything. By the end of that week, the wedding looked less like a celebration and more like a crumbling castle. People were bailing faster than Celeste could guilt them. One of her bridesmaids backed out, citing financial strain. Another just disappeared from the group chat entirely. Even Liam's best friend from college, his best man, sent a private message saying he didn't feel comfortable signing a legal agreement just to attend a wedding. Then came the text from Celeste herself. And this time, she wasn't even trying to hide her anger. "You've poisoned everything," she wrote. "Liam trusted you. I trusted you. And now we're watching our wedding fall apart because you couldn't handle not being the center of attention." The audacity nearly knocked the phone out of my hand. She really believed that's what this was about, that I wanted attention. Meanwhile, I was just trying to stop my brother from sleepwalking into a marriage that looked more like a brand collaboration than a partnership. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because the cracks were already showing. Celeste started micromanaging everything. She sent a mass email to remaining guests with a clarification document explaining the NDA in friendlier language. "This is not about secrecy," she wrote. "It's about curating a meaningful digital experience. We're not silencing you. We're protecting our narrative." I don't think she realized how dystopian that sounded. Even the guests who were still planning to go started getting cold feet. My cousin Jonah, who had been defending Celeste up until that point, called me and said, "Bro, I'm starting to think this whole thing's a red flag farm." Celeste predictably doubled down. She updated her Instagram bio to read, "Curator of intentional love. Wife-to-be. Protected energy only." She started posting inspirational quotes about loyalty support and watching snakes reveal themselves. The captions were subtle, but the message was clear. We were the villains in her love story. And Liam. He was slipping further away. He'd stopped texting, stopped calling. My mom said he barely answered her anymore. My dad, always the quiet one. Finally spoke up one night over dinner. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You know, if you keep handing someone the remote, they're gonna change the channel on you." I think that was his way of saying he agreed. Still, we didn't know just how bad things were getting until Rosa, the same cousin who called it a cult, sent me screenshots from a private group chat she was still part of. It was Celeste. She'd gone off. In one message, she accused certain toxic relatives, G. Wonder, who of sabotaging her relationship. In another, she called the family small-minded and afraid of growth. Then came the big one. If these people can't celebrate our love the way it deserves to be celebrated, maybe this isn't worth it anymore. That's when I felt it. The shift. For the first time, I realized there was a real chance this wedding might not happen. Because Celeste wasn't just losing her grip on the guest list, she was losing Liam too. He'd always been passive, conflict avoidant, eager to please. But even he had limits, and I could tell beneath the silence something inside him was starting to wake up. Later that night, I got a voice note from Liam. Not a text, not a message from Celeste through his phone. Just him. "I don't know what I'm doing," he said quietly. "I wanted this to be special, but everything's falling apart. I don't know if it's even mine anymore." It hit me harder than I expected, because I heard it the old Liam, the real one, the kid who used to build pillow forts with me and talk about what kind of dads we'd be someday. He was still in there, buried under schedules and scripts and Celeste's curated reality, but he was still in there. And for the first time, he sounded scared, not of losing the wedding, but of losing himself. After that voice note from Liam, I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, playing his words over and over in my head. I don't know if it's even mine anymore. That sentence wouldn't leave me. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was about everything. The life he'd been building, or thought he had, now felt like a house someone else had designed for him, and he was only now realizing he'd never picked the furniture. The next morning, I didn't reach out. I didn't want to push him. I figured if he was really starting to question things, he'd come to me when he was ready. But Celeste must have felt something shifting too, because that same day, her grip on the narrative tightened. She posted a long caption under a photo of her standing in front of a cathedral in Rome. Hair perfect. Dress flowing. not a wrinkle or stray hair in sight. The caption read, "Some people fear a woman who knows what she wants. But strong women aren't intimidating. They're just tired of playing small for people who confuse control with loyalty." It didn't mention Liam, but it didn't need to. The comments were full of "You go queen" and "Drop the dead weight." People were cheering her on without even knowing the full story. She'd started rewriting reality in real time, framing herself as the misunderstood heroine, surrounded by villains who didn't support her vision. My phone buzzed all day. Cousins, old friends, even a few acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me variations of the same thing. "Is she okay?" And dude, she's spiraling. Then came the worst part. She started contacting our family, not through Liam, not even through my parents. She went rogue. She sent direct messages to our aunts, our cousins, even my mom's best friend from college. All filled with the same sugary venom, how disappointed she was, how much she'd tried, how heartbreaking it was that people couldn't just be happy for them. She painted herself as the peacemaker, said she'd done everything with love, claimed we had bullied her, gaslit her, made her feel like an outsider. It was clever, polished, just vague enough to sound reasonable if you didn't know the full story. And it worked on some of them. I could see it in how the group chat changed. People got quieter. Nobody wanted to pick a side out loud, but I could feel the shift, like we were all waiting to see where the wind blew next. My mom, finally fed up, called Liam. He didn't answer. Then she called again. And again. Still nothing. Eventually, she left a voicemail. Nothing dramatic. Just a soft, tired plea. "Please call me back. I don't know what's happening, and I'm scared for you." He called her that night. Didn't say much, just that he needed space, that he was figuring things out. My mom cried after, not because she was angry, but because it was the first time her own son sounded like a stranger. Meanwhile, I got a call from Jonah, the cousin who'd been on the fence trying to keep the peace. He told me something that made my blood run cold. "I think she's trying to corner him," he said. "Word is she gave Liam an ultimatum." I didn't want to believe it, but it made too much sense. Celeste was all about optics. She needed the fairy tale, the power couple image, the perfect wedding with the perfect guest list and perfect social coverage. If Liam was wavering even a little, she'd want to squash that fast, not with a conversation, but with a choice, me or them. And sure enough, 2 days later, I got the confirmation. Liam texted me, one line. She said if I don't stand by her fully, we're done. I didn't even know how to respond. A dozen replies sat unsent in my drafts. I deleted every one, because none of them could fix what he had to decide for himself. The next few days were a blur. Celeste started scrambling. You could see it in her posts. Gone were the peaceful affirmations and Zen quotes. Now it was damage control. Long stories about setting boundaries and not tolerating disrespect. A carousel of crying selfies. A black screen post with a white font quote. Sometimes love isn't enough when ego gets in the way. I don't know who she thought she was fooling. Behind the scenes, vendors were starting to pull out. The florist posted something passive-aggressive about entitled clients and unpaid invoices. The caterer backed out entirely, citing incompatibility in expectations. My uncle, who owns a small event planning company, called me and said bluntly, "No serious vendor wants to touch that wedding now. It's a liability." Then came the message that changed everything. Liam showed up, unannounced. He knocked on my door late one night. No text, no warning. Just stood there, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were red. His face was pale. He was holding his phone, and when he handed it to me, I didn't even know what I was looking at. It was a text thread from Celeste. Long, emotional paragraphs, rambling thoughts, voice notes of her crying, a photo of her sitting on their bed with his hoodie captioned, "I miss when you chose me." Without hesitation. And then at the very end, the ultimatum spelled out clearly. If you don't cut them off, Noah, your parents, your cousins, then this wedding doesn't happen. I need to know you choose me over the noise, over the people who never wanted us together anyway. I handed the phone back. He sat on the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. I waited. Let the silence sit between us. Then he finally spoke. I thought love was supposed to feel like freedom, he said quietly. Not this. It broke something in me. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to goatstream. I wanted to fix it. But all I said was, then maybe it's not love. That night he didn't go home. He slept on my couch, fully dressed, shoes still on. He didn't eat. Barely talked. But he didn't leave. That was the first sign that maybe, just maybe, he was ready to let go. The next morning he texted Celeste. 4 words. We need to talk. Liam's message. We need to talk was simple. But I could tell from the way he said it, from the stillness in his voice when he sent it, that it wasn't just a conversation he was preparing for. It was a reckoning. The next 24 hours moved like fog. Neither of us said much. He sat in my apartment like he was on pause, as if every decision in his life had been put on hold until that meeting with Celeste. He barely touched his phone, didn't check socials, didn't even flinch when notifications popped up. And that, more than anything, told me how done he already was. Celeste didn't reply immediately. That alone surprised me. She was always quick to control the narrative, jump in before she lost ground. But this time, nothing. Hours passed. Finally, she responded with 1 word. When he sent back tonight. And just like that, it was happening. I offered to go with him, not to be involved, but to wait outside just so he wasn't walking into that kind of tension alone. He shook his head, said he had to do it by himself, said it was time he stopped letting someone else speak louder than his own gut. He left just after 8. By then, the sky was already dark, the streets quiet, but my heart was pounding like it was the middle of a storm. I don't know what I expected when he came back. Maybe tears, anger, or nothing at all. But what I got was collapse. He came through the door close to midnight. Didn't say anything at first, just stood there. Then he let out a breath like he'd been holding it for years, and said, "It's over." I waited. She cried, he added, not because it was ending, but because she couldn't control it. He sat down slowly, like his body had finally caught up to the truth. He said she didn't argue much. At first, she tried to guilt him. I gave up everything for you. Your family poisoned you against me. We had a plan. Then she shifted, became cold, accused him of being weak, of not knowing what commitment meant. He just let her talk, and when she finally paused, waiting for him to fight back, he didn't. He just said, "I don't want this anymore. I want peace." She laughed at that, called him delusional, said there was no peace without her. That was the last thing she said before he walked out. The next morning, it was everywhere. Celeste had posted a long, polished statement on Instagram. Black background, white font, her signature dramatic style. After much reflection, I've made the difficult decision to end my engagement. Some things are just too sacred to be shared with those who can't see your worth. It was full of vague, pain, spiritual buzzwords, and absolutely no mention of Liam. But everyone knew. The comments exploded with sympathy. You deserve better. He clearly wasn't ready for a real woman. You were glowing too bright for him. But behind the screen, everything was unraveling. Vendors demanded payments. Her parents were livid. Guests who had booked flights, taken off work, ordered outfits, all started asking questions. And the worst part, Celeste didn't respond to any of them. Instead, she doubled down. Posted photos from her bridal shoot like the wedding was still happening. Wrote captions about learning to walk alone with grace. Meanwhile, her inner circle. Cracking. One of the bridesmaids, Claire, reached out to me. We hadn't spoken since the start of the drama, but her message was clear: she's not okay, and she's blaming everyone. Claire told me that Celeste had flipped when she found out people were withdrawing from the wedding group chat. Said it was betrayal. Accused them of being jealous, unsupportive, weak. She even made a spreadsheet of who was truly loyal and who had let her down. I thought Claire was joking. She wasn't. Then things got messier. Mutual friends started picking sides. Some stayed neutral, trying to keep the peace. But others, especially those who had witnessed Celeste's behavior up close, began quietly backing away. One of Liam's old college roommates unfollowed her on everything. A couple of her influencer friends stopped liking her posts. Even her go-to makeup artist posted a cryptic story. Integrity matters more than visibility. The narrative was shifting. People weren't just sympathizing with her anymore. They were starting to question her and Liam. He was quiet. Not a post, not a comment. Nothing. But silence in this case was louder than anything he could have said. The fallout didn't stop with social media. Celeste's parents demanded answers. Apparently, they had fronted deposits for the venue photography and part of the designer dress collection for her bridesmaids. Now, with everything canceled, they were demanding she explain what went wrong. She told them Liam bailed, that he cracked under pressure. But they weren't buying it. I heard through the grapevine that her dad had said something brutal to her. If it was really love, why did it scare everyone else away? Meanwhile, Liam's world got smaller and freer. He stayed with me for a few more days, just trying to find his footing again. One night, we were sitting on the balcony. He hadn't spoken for a while, just stared out into the street. Then he said something I'll never forget. I was so focused on making it work, I never stopped to ask if it should. That hit me harder than I expected, because it was true for a lot of us. How often do we force things, jobs, relationships, expectations, just because we're scared of the silence that follows? Letting go. He started opening up after that. Told me about things I hadn't known. How Celeste monitored his calls. How she filtered which friends he spent time with. How she made him rehearse what he'd say when they met her family. It wasn't always overt. Sometimes it was a look, a sigh, a joke that wasn't a joke. He admitted something that broke me. I started to believe I was lucky she even wanted me, like I had to earn my place beside her every day. That's what manipulation looks like. Quiet, polished, wrapped in compliments and expectations. And once you're inside, you forget what your own voice sounds like. But now he was finding it again. Celeste, though, wasn't done. Her posts got more erratic, less polished, more reactive. She wrote about fake friends and family that chooses enemies over blood. She even hinted at legal action, saying she was considering her options due to the emotional damages caused by abandonment. It was absurd, but it was also desperate. That's the thing about people like her. They don't let go. Not because they care, but because letting go means losing the stage. And she needed the spotlight more than she ever needed love. Liam started job hunting again. Not for a new role, but for a promotion he'd put off chasing while wedding planning. He got it within weeks. His boss told him he looked more focused, more present. And for the first time in months, I saw him smile without hesitation. He even reconnected with some old friends. One of them, a girl named Danny, used to be part of our summer beach trips. They lost touch when Celeste came into the picture, but now they were texting again. Nothing serious, just light, real easy. It was like he was coming back to life. And Celeste. Her influencer brand took a hit. The deals slowed. The engagement dropped. People were tired of the endless healing journey posts that always blamed someone else. The more she posted, the less people believed her. By the end of the month, her engagement photos were gone. Her wedding highlight reel had been deleted. And her latest story, a black screen that said, "Sometimes people let their worst selves win. But I'll rise like I always do." Sure, Celeste, keep rising. Just maybe next time, without stepping on everyone else to do it. Even when a storm passes, the silence it leaves behind doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes it brings a different kind of discomfort, one that makes you sit with everything that was said and everything that wasn't. That was the air we were breathing in the weeks after the wedding. That wasn't. The date came and went. July 14th. A date that had once been circled on calendars embossed on cardstock whispered with excitement. Now it was just another Sunday. No ceremony, no champagne, no photos under archways of white roses, just an inbox full of refund requests and a digital graveyard of deleted hashtags. Liam spent that day with me. We didn't talk about what it was supposed to be. We didn't need to. Instead, we grilled burgers on my tiny balcony, watched bad action movies, and let the quiet settle. For the first time in months, he laughed without checking himself halfway through. He looked lighter, like someone who'd finally taken off a jacket that never quite fit, but wore it anyway, because someone told him it looked good. The rest of the family was still recovering from the emotional whiplash. My mom had gone through her own spiral, half guilt, half fury. She admitted quietly over coffee one morning that she'd seen red flags in Celeste from the start, but chose to stay quiet. I thought maybe it was just me, she said. Maybe I was being old-fashioned or overprotective. But I knew. Deep down, I knew. My dad, unsurprisingly, said very little. Just poured himself a scotch that night and muttered whole damn thing was a circus. That was his way of saying he was glad it was over. But not everyone let it go. Celeste's mother, Lydia, reached out to my mom a week later, claimed she just wanted closure, said it was all a misunderstanding that got out of hand. They're young, she wrote. They didn't know how to navigate the pressure. But there was something sharp under the words, like she was laying groundwork for something else. My mom didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Because at this point, we all knew Celeste didn't deal in closure. She dealt in damage control. And sure enough, a few days later, she went public again. She posted a carefully edited video on YouTube titled "Choosing Myself: Why I Walked Away." It was 28 minutes of softly lit monologues, violin music, and buzzwords like toxic loyalty, spiritual betrayal, and unseen wounds. She painted herself as the brave one, the woman who had the strength to leave an engagement that no longer served her. She didn't name Liam, but the subtext was loud. She implied he'd collapsed under family pressure, that she'd been gaslit into silence, and that some love stories exist only to teach you boundaries. The comments were split. Some followers ate it up, calling her a survivor and praising her for reclaiming the narrative. Others weren't buying it. Especially not after a clip surfaced from one of her old Instagram lives, where she referred to the wedding as a curated love aesthetic and joked about filtering the guest list like I filter my feed. That soundbite went viral. People started connecting dots. The Reddit post, the NDA, the destination costs, the spreadsheet of loyal friends. All the receipts had already been floating out there. It just took one spark. And then the shift became a landslide. One of her former brand partners, a skincare company, dropped her quietly. Just a short note about realigning with creators who reflect our values. Another influencer she'd collabed with posted a TikTok story talking about an ex-friend who treated her engagement like an ad campaign. Again, no names, but the timing was no accident. Liam saw the video. He didn't flinch. "I let her live in my head too long," he said. "She can have the internet. I'll take real life." And real life was beginning to look good on him. He started therapy, not because he was falling apart, but because he wanted to figure out why he'd let it go that far, why he'd allowed someone else's voice to drown out his own. He didn't blame Celeste for everything. He blamed himself, too, for being complicit, for being quiet when he should have spoken, for loving someone more for what they represented than who they really were. That was the hardest part for him to admit. He said, "I didn't love her. I loved the idea of proving I could hold on to someone like that kind of truth. It doesn't come easily. It comes when the ego finally shuts up and lets the heart speak." And for the first time, Liam was listening to himself. Our family slowly started healing too. The tension in group chats eased. Jokes returned. Someone changed the name of our family thread from Liam and Celeste forever to just the people who stayed. It was a quiet declaration of who still belonged. And me, I finally stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. For months, I had been carrying this low-grade dread, like Celeste would pop back up with a new version of the story, or some half-hearted attempt to spin the ending into another content arc. But her content became sparse, the posts less frequent, less engagement. It was like the audience she'd built had moved on. And without the wedding, the identity she had crafted was fractured. Still, there was one moment I didn't expect. It came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was walking to get coffee when I got a message request from a name I didn't recognize. The photo was a flower icon. No face. The message just said he wasn't perfect either. I hope you remember that. It was her. Not from her main account, likely a burner. But it had her cadence. That blend of victimhood and veiled threat. That desperate need to remind me she wasn't the villain in her version of the story. I didn't reply. She wanted a reaction, a spark. One more round in a fight she'd already lost. Instead, I blocked the account and moved on with my day. Because here's the truth, some people don't heal. They perform healing. They use it like a costume. But underneath, they're still trying to script the world into seeing them as the hero. Liam doesn't need that anymore, and neither do I. It's strange how healing doesn't announce itself. It just arrives one day, soft as morning light, and you realize you're not holding your breath anymore. That's how it happened with Liam. Not in a big speech or an epiphany moment, just small things, subtle shifts. He stopped checking her socials. He didn't flinch when her name came up. And when he laughed, it wasn't followed by a sigh. It was full, unapologetic, free. It had been nearly 5 months since the wedding was called off. Autumn was settling in leaves, dropping like quiet reminders that not everything dead needs mourning. Liam had just moved into a new apartment across town. Nothing fancy, just a 3rd-floor walk-up with creaky floors and a balcony barely wide enough for 2 chairs. But it was his. He painted the walls himself, hung up old vinyl covers as art, and filled the place with plants he swore he wouldn't forget to water. There was something symbolic in that, replacing a life of curated appearances with one he could actually breathe in. One Saturday, I helped him set up his bookshelf. As we arranged dog-eared novels and photo albums, he pulled out a small box. "This is the last of her," he said, not bitter, just matter of fact. Inside were old cards, printed wedding drafts, and a necklace she once gave him with his initials and hers engraved. He didn't throw it away. He didn't burn it either. He walked it down to the donation bin and let it go. Like someone finally understanding that closure isn't something you demand. It's something you allow. Meanwhile, Celeste had gone quiet. Not just social media quiet, real quiet. After her self-love rebrand flopped and the sponsorships dried up, she tried pivoting to podcasting, then wellness coaching, then a short-lived YouTube comeback that fizzled before it started. People had seen too much. The veil was off, and no amount of soft lighting or curated hashtags could bring it back. She tried to make herself the phoenix. But the ashes she left behind were too public, too messy, and too many people had the receipts. A cousin told us she had moved back in with her parents again. No fiancé, no brand deals, just a girl whose empire had been built on control and whose kingdom fell when the subjects stopped applauding. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't even feel smug. Just indifferent. And that's how I knew we'd all made it to the other side. Liam started seeing someone new around that time. Her name was Natalie. She worked at a community library, had a soft voice, and a sarcasm that came out when you least expected it. The first time we met, she brought over homemade banana bread and beat me at Scrabble. Twice. She didn't ask about Celeste, didn't poke the past. She just listened, offered space, and let Liam show up as himself. No scripts, no pressure, no staged perfection. Just real moments, the kind that actually mean something. And for once, Liam didn't question it. He didn't overthink the pace or try to perform some version of who he thought he needed to be. He just Was. It was like watching a man remember his own rhythm after years of dancing to someone else's tune. Our family, too, was stronger. Not in the loud holiday card kind of way, but in the subtle ways. More Sunday dinners, more inside jokes, less walking on eggshells. My parents finally let go of the guilt. My dad, who had once kept his opinions buried, started speaking more freely. "We all saw it," he said one night. "We just didn't want to admit what it would cost to say it out loud." My mom nodded. She's the one who encouraged Liam to keep going to therapy, and she was the first to call Natalie a breath of fresh air. As for me, I'd finally let myself rest. For so long, I'd carried the role of the sibling who watched from the sidelines, the one who waved the red flags no one wanted to see. It had been exhausting. But now I could let go. Liam didn't need saving. He'd already saved himself. One night, the two of us sat on his balcony, looking out over the city, sharing cheap wine out of mismatched mugs. He was quiet for a long time, then said, "I think I was addicted to the idea of being chosen. You know, like if she chose me, then I must be worth something." I didn't interrupt. I just waited. He kept going. "But being chosen doesn't mean you're seen. And she never really saw me, not the real me." That hit harder than anything he'd said before, because it was true. Celeste didn't love Liam. She loved what he represented. Someone moldable. Someone who didn't push back. Someone who made her look good. But that version of Liam was gone. What remained now was someone solid. Someone thoughtful. Someone who'd earned every inch of peace he now held. In December, Liam hosted a small get-together, just close friends and family. It wasn't a party exactly, more like a celebration of normalcy. There were no NDAs, no gift registries, no curated photo booths, just laughter board games and the smell of chili simmering on the stove. At one point, I caught him and Natalie dancing in the kitchen to an old Sam Cooke song, arms wrapped loosely, feet barely moving. No spotlight, just contentment. It was the kind of moment you don't need to post to prove it mattered. It just did. The next day, he sent me a text. "Thanks for not giving up on me." I didn't reply with anything poetic. I just said, "Never had to." "You found your way," and he had. That's the thing people don't talk about enough. Not all breakups are about lost love. Some are about reclaimed identity, about realizing you've been living someone else's dream and finally having the courage to wake up. Liam's story wasn't just about escaping Celeste. It was about returning to himself. We still joke about the wedding sometimes, how it became the most iconic event that never happened. Every now and then, someone will say, "Remember the great NDA debacle," and we all laugh. But the laugh isn't bitter anymore. It's healing. Because what tried to break us ended up bringing us back together. And Celeste. She became a chapter we no longer revisit. Not because we're erasing history, but because it's no longer where the story ends. The real story. The one that matters was never about the wedding. It was about who we all became when we stopped trying to fit into someone else's fairy tale and started writing our own. Story 2. I'm 42 years old, and my name is Myra Ellison. My daughter, Zoe. And I reside in the quiet, small town of Brookhaven. I've been parenting her alone since my spouse and I got divorced 5 years ago. Zoe makes every moment worthwhile, even though life hasn't always been simple. On Maple Street, I own a tiny bookshop. It's simple, with shelves brimming with gently used paperbacks and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee from the nearby cafe. I've established a consistent routine in this peaceful region of the world, and the people know me by name. Zoe is a calm youngster who is kind, and much older than other children her age. Her eyes are the same shade of warm brown as mine, and she has long, honey-colored hair that she received from her father. Even though she isn't a communicative person, her soul speaks when her fingers contact the piano keys. Her language is music, and I feel as though I'm seeing something sacred with each note she plays. When Zoe got home from school one afternoon, She took an apple off the kitchen counter and left her backpack on the ground. "What's for supper tonight, Mom?" Joey inquired. I grinned as I took ingredients out of the refrigerator and bit into it. "Chicken pot pie, perhaps. Your favorite?" She nodded, and her eyes brightened. "Before supper, may I play Chopin's Prelude? I want the class tomorrow to go well." "That would be wonderful," I remarked, putting the veggies down. "Go on, my love." With her tiny fingers moving across the keys, Zoe approached the upright piano in the living room and carefully opened the lid. Soft, melancholy melodies flooded the atmosphere. It seemed as though the walls leaned in to listen each time she performed. The evening ought to have been straightforward and joyous. Just the familiar noises of home, a mother and a daughter. However, there was always a gloom in my heart underlying everything. There was a name for that shadow. My parents, Linda and Robert, and my family reside in a big house with a well-kept garden and too many memories on the outskirts of Brookhaven. Previously, they operated a prosperous downtown diner, but they are now retired. They reside a few blocks away from my younger sister, Jenna. She is a single mother to her 8-year-old twin sons, Ryan and Mason, who are renowned for being noisy, rambunctious, and to be honest, a little spoiled. She works at a nearby insurance company. I was the responsible one growing up. Every night, the daughter helped shut the restaurant, vacuumed the floors, and cleaned the dishes. Conversely, Jenna was the sweetheart, the family's adorable newborn. In the event that she spilt a glass, she got away with everything. It was referred to be an accident. Putting aside my annoyance, I was being rude when I voiced my complaints. The same thing was always repeated by my mother. "The oldest is you. Reflect. That is your responsibility." I finally gave up whining and came to terms with it. However, certain things are constant. Jenna's boys continue to be the topic of attention during family get-togethers. Everyone nods politely when I bring up Zoe's piano performance, and then they all start talking about how Ryan solved a Rubik's Cube or how Mason is learning karate. It still hurts on the inside, even if I grin through it. For Zoe's sake, I've made an effort to stay in touch with them, in spite of everything. She shouldn't grow up without grandparents, in my opinion. I don't want her to experience my emotions. Invisible. Zoe was sitting at the dining table on a Thursday night, completing her homework. "Are we going to Grandma and Grandpa's house this weekend, Mom?" she inquired nonchalantly as she looked up. It was a surprise question. Why, according to Ryan and Mason, they received a new gaming system at school. I only hoped that I may be able to see it. I paused. It wasn't a gaming system. Video games didn't interest her. All she wanted was to fit in, perhaps to feel like a member of a larger family. I forced a grin and said, "I don't know yet. Let's see." But my heart constricted inside. With her, I didn't trust them. Not quite. Not when I had seen what their definition of love looked like in the past. 1 week later, I got an envelope in the mail. Delicate flower motifs were pressed into the paper, giving it a cream color. It contained an invitation to my college flatmate Sarah Williams's wedding, as she was one of the only individuals who had supported me during my divorce. It had been years since I attended a wedding. It sounded good to dress up and spend an evening, even if only briefly, surrounded by music and laughing. And I should have stood by Sarah. That night, while I sat on the sofa going over the invitation, she had finally found happiness after her own loss. As she flipped through a music book, Zoe nestled up next to me. "What am I going to do, Mom?" "While you're at the wedding?" she inquired. I stopped. Perhaps we might invite someone to stay with you, I thought. "Or would you want to stay with Grandma and Grandpa for the day?" Zoe raised her head thoughtfully. "They may listen to me play the piano. Grandma seems to enjoy Chopin." I hesitated at her response. Despite my gut telling me not to leave her there, I reminded myself after seeing her expectant expression. Perhaps things would be different this time. They could have changed. Or perhaps I was simply sick of thinking the worst. That evening, I gave my mother a call. Naturally. Reflect. Having Zoe would be wonderful. Brightly, Linda stated over the phone. Too much time has passed. Her music books are welcome. We'll hang up and enjoy ourselves. I looked over at Zoe. Do you think you'll be all right there? She gave a soft nod. Grandma and I are excited to play the piano together. All right then, I'll drop you off tomorrow evening, and I'll pick you up the next day, I said, stroking her hair. Although I told myself it would only be for one night, I still felt a little uneasy. What could a single night do? It felt different the following morning. I felt lighter than I had in a long time. Wearing a wine-red silk dress that I hadn't touched in a long time, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror. I applied a little makeup and carefully pinned my hair up. For a few hours, just enough to feel like someone other than a mother or a bookshop owner. When Zoe saw me, her eyes widened as she entered the room. "Mom, you look really pretty," she said with a shy smile. I turned toward her and smoothed her hair. "Thank you, sweetheart. Be a good girl at Grandma's." "Okay, practice the piano. I know she'll enjoy hearing you play." Zoe had already packed her backpack the night before. Some books, her sheet music, her asthma inhaler, and allergy medicine. We drove through the quiet streets of Brookhaven, the late afternoon sun glowing against the trees as we pulled into my parents' driveway. That familiar blend of nostalgia and discomfort crept into my chest. Linda opened the door with a wide smile. "Zoe, come in." "Come in. Grandma's been waiting." She hugged Zoe and gave me a once-over mirror. "You look lovely in that dress." "Thanks," I said, flatly setting Zoe's bag down inside the doorway. Her meds are in the front pocket. Her asthma is under control, but just in case. Also, she has a mild nut allergy. Yes, don't worry. We'll take care of our granddaughter," Robert added, stepping into view behind her. I looked at them both, my fingers tightening around my car keys. "I'll pick her up tomorrow evening." Zoe gave me a quick hug, her face calm. "Have fun, Mom." "Don't worry." I forced a smile and turned to go. The wedding venue was already buzzing when I arrived. Flowers, music, laughter. It felt like another world. Sarah was glowing in her white gown, and when she saw me, her face lit up. "Reflect." "You came. Oh, I'm so happy to see you," she said, pulling me into a hug. "You look beautiful, Sarah. I'm really happy for you." We talked, laughed, danced for a little while. I let myself feel like a woman again. Not just a mother. But midway through the evening as the cake was being served, I received a text from my mother. "Zoe is just being a little disobedient. Nothing serious." My stomach twisted. I try not to overthink it. Maybe she was just watching too much TV or refusing vegetables. Still, that uneasiness crept back in, just like it always did. "Mira, you okay?" asked Lisa, another college friend sitting beside me. "Yeah, just a bit nervous," my mom said. "Zoe's not listening." Lisa waved her hand. "Oh, kids, you finally seem relaxed. Enjoy it." I nodded, smiled, but my heart had already moved. I checked the time and decided to depart sooner than intended. As I drove back through the peaceful streets, something in me just sensed something wasn't right. As I arrived into the driveway of my parents' house, the sky had darkened to a light blue. The porch light threw a golden glow on the front stairs, yet something seemed odd. The door was slightly ajar. I stepped inside. No one came to meet me from the living room. I heard the booming noises of video games, quick clicking explosions, eager voices. I stepped in and noticed Ryan and Mason sitting on the couch, deeply immersed in their new gaming system. When I walked in, they didn't even look up. "Hey," I remarked in a forceful voice, where Zoe no answer. When I entered the kitchen, I could hear water running. My heart fell. Zoe's little form trembled as she stood on a stool by the kitchen sink. Her hands were in a wash basin filled with dishes and soapy water. But I wasn't frozen in place because of it. She had a cut just above her right eyebrow, and the blood was seeping out. On the floor close by was a broken piece of glass. Linda was drinking coffee at the kitchen table in a relaxed manner. As if it were any other evening, Jenna stood next to her, arms crossed, talking. What took place? I was trembling as I spoke. Unfazed, Linda looked up. I reprimanded her since she wouldn't assist. She is exaggerating. I approached Zoe right away and carefully removed her hands from the wash basin. I used a towel to clean her wet fingertips, and she grimaced, flinching a little. Then, with shaky fingers, I grabbed for her face and studied the gushing cut above her eye. "I don't want to do the dishes," she added. Dismissively, Linda added. So I gave her a glass tap. It wasn't difficult. She needs to learn to be respectful. "You threw a glass at her?" My voice was hardly heard as I asked. Jenna shrugged and claimed she needed discipline. "You treat her reflection too leniently." I was having trouble breathing. Zoe's crimson, puffy, and quietly imploring eyes greeted my. Taking a long breath, I steadied my hands and took out my phone. 911. What emergency do you have? My daughter, who is 10 years old, has been attacked. Her head is gushing blood. Right now, I need paramedics and cops at 621 Willow Bend Drive. In a matter of minutes, flashing red and blue lights broke the neighborhood's calm. In front of the home, an ambulance and a police vehicle arrived. The sleeve of my dress was covered with blood from Zoe's cut, and I was standing in the doorway with her in my arms, her head resting against my shoulder. 2 cops and 2 paramedics carrying medical kits exited the vehicle. I gestured to the kitchen. "She's inside," I spoke in a flat, icy tone. "She used a glass to strike my daughter. The weapon on the floor by the wash basin is that." The policeman came in coolly, but firmly. Linda was still drinking her coffee at the table. Jenna rested her head on the counter, crossed arms, and cop came up to Linda. "Please get up, ma'am." "What is this?" With her brows raised as though the whole thing were beneath her, she questioned. "For assault and endangering the welfare of a kid, you are being placed under arrest. The right to silence is yours." "What? That's ridiculous. Her grandma is me." She sprang up suddenly and yelled, "You used a glass item to attack a minor." Taking her arm, the officer said forcefully, "In court, you'll have an opportunity to defend yourself." When Linda refused, Jenna took the initiative. "Hold on a second. This is completely exaggerated. She was only attempting to instill discipline in the girl. You saw the second cop turn to face her, but you did nothing about it." Jenna opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "For obstruction and neglecting to report abuse, you will be placed under arrest. At the station, we'll resolve the matter." After handcuffing Linda, they led her out the front door. Jenna, also in handcuffs, followed. She looked shocked and pale. One of the paramedics, meantime, carefully removed Zoe from my arms and placed her on the trolley. While the other checked her vitals, he looked at the cut above her eyebrow. He said, "She's stable. The wounds are clean yet deep. Her sutures and a thorough examination will need us to take her to the hospital." I brushed Zoe's hair back and nodded. "I'll accompany you." As we climbed into the ambulance, Zoe's hand held mine firmly. I turned to face the house where I used to try to believe. Safety meant family. All I could see now was a crime scene. Despite the bright lighting, the emergency room felt chilly. Too distant from the cozy, comfortable world, too cold to be quiet. Zoe was lying on the hospital bed holding my hand, while the doctor cleaned the wound on her forehead. I had attempted to give her something. She didn't cry. Since the ambulance ride, she hadn't cried a tear. I was more deeply hurt by that silence than by any scream. The doctor spoke softly. A gentle woman with gentle eyes. Although the laceration is clean, 5 stitches were required. We looked for signs of a concussion. I would like to keep her overnight for observation, even though her vitals are normal. Naturally, I muttered. I sat next to Zoe after the doctor left and combed her hair, stroking a loose strand behind her ear. I apologized in a low voice. It was wrong of me to take you there. I ought to have followed my gut. At last, Zoe turned to face me, her eyes puffy and exhausted. "Mom, I did not do anything wrong. My only desire was to play the piano. In my throat, a knot formed. There was nothing wrong with you. Nothing at all. You weren't at blame for what occurred. When she eventually fell asleep, I could feel her little body relax as she rested her head against my arm. I went out into the corridor. My head was clearer than ever, yet my hands were still shaking. I took out my phone and called someone else. Hello. Indeed, I must consult a family law lawyer. It's critical. This was more than a simple injury. This was about speaking up for my child, for myself, and for the years of quiet I had accepted behind the mask of familial responsibility. My mother had crossed a boundary, and now I was determined to make sure the law did what love had failed to do, hold her accountable. 2 days later, I sat in the office of Mark Ellis, a keen-eyed, quiet-spoken attorney who specialized in family law and child protection matters. A copy of the hospital report was given to him. The official police report from the night of the event, along with pictures of Zoe's injuries. He nodded slowly as he leafed through the papers. Mara, this is a compelling argument. You have eyewitness accounts, a recorded 911 call, medical proof, and a minor victim. The pursuit of criminal charges for child abuse is more than sufficient. I want to go on. My voice was steady as I spoke. No second chances. No excuses from family. Justice is due to my daughter. Mark bent over. After that, we'll immediately press criminal charges. To stop further communication, we can also seek a restraining order if you'd like. I desire both. Without hesitation, I said. The documentation was filed by the end of the week. Because of the seriousness of the attack, the matter was taken up by the district attorney's office, and the court scheduled the preliminary hearing. Jenna had been freed awaiting inquiry, but not without repercussions, and Linda was already being jailed without bail. She was charged with willful neglect and obstruction, both misdemeanors. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom seemed heavy, but I sat in the first row with Zoe and gripped her hand tightly. Wearing a beige jumpsuit, Linda stood in the defendant's box, her eyes vacuous and proud. The evidence was overwhelming, but she never once looked at us. The testimony of the physician. My 911 call was played out loud in front of everyone, according to the paramedics. For the jury, the pictures of Zoe's injury were magnified. The judge's tone was icy, but his face remained expressionless. Following discussion, the punishment was given. For serious child abuse, Linda Porter is therefore given a 5-year term in state prison. After a year, parole eligibility will be examined under close supervision. It was Jenna's turn next. She received a sentence that included required parenting classes, 6 months of community service, and a year of court monitoring, because she failed to take action and put a youngster in risk. I felt at ease, but not triumphant. I gazed at Zoe by my side, fearless, secure, and healing, and I was aware that we were no longer victims. We made it through. I took some time off from everything after the sentencing, vacations with the family, even my bookstore's limited social networks. I required room. Zoe required room. Above all, we required time to recover. We went back to our daily schedule, but a fundamental shift had occurred. Zoe has an understated strength, right now, one that has never been there. She continued to play the piano, but her performance had more presence and more assurance, as if she had something to prove, but not to them, to herself. My father Robert called, but I didn't answer. Others of his voicemails were passionate. Others were imploring, some had half-formed phrases and silent apologies. I didn't answer. Not quite yet. Jenna, on the other hand, vanished into her own maelstrom. Through common acquaintances, I learned that she was having difficulties. Her relationship was disintegrating for the first time, and parenting was crumbling under the pressure of responsibility. She was experiencing what it felt like to be held accountable. In the evenings, Zoe and I read make-easy dinners and get ready for her impending piano concert. It was quieter in the home now, lighter. She glanced up at me from the other side of the table one evening as we were cleaning up after supper. "Will I ever have to see Grandma again, Mom?" I approached and knelt next to her chair. "No," I answered quietly. "If you don't want to." No, that decision is now up to you. Nobody else. She let out a breath, clearly relieved. All right. She practiced Debussy's Clair de Lune the next morning with more soul than I had ever heard her perform. It was no longer only a musical composition. It was a liberation. The Thursday afternoon was wet. When my phone rang, I had just closed the bookshop early because of the bad weather. I had no idea what the number was, and for a second I thought I would ignore it, but I felt compelled to respond. Hi there. Hello, is Allison in this mirror? Indeed. Who's talking? Claire from St. Vincent's Hospital is here. Robert Porter. Your father had a heart attack and was admitted this morning. You were on his emergency contact list. My throat tightened with breath. Oh, I see. Is he steady? We advise you to come in as soon as you can, although he is not in immediate danger. Thank you. I'll be over there soon. The hospital smelt of silent anxiety and antiseptic. Almost automatically, I made my way through the hallways until I arrived at the cardiac unit, via room 214's window. My father was lying in bed, thin and pallid, with more equipment than I could count attached to him. I went inside and took a seat next to him. He had his eyes shut. I remained silent. After some time, he gently opened his eyes and turned to face me. Reflect, he muttered. You arrived. Yes, I did. His voice broke. I apologize for what I allowed to occur, for what I failed to halt. I remained silent. He was not forgiven by me, nor did I assault him. I simply sat in silence, in a moment that had nothing to do with comfort or atonement. Just the facts. My father started his gradual recuperation in the weeks that followed. He was placed in a home care program with weekly nurse visits, medication schedules, and physical therapy after being released from the hospital. I consented to assist 3 days a week on my terms. I would drop by to talk to the nurses, check on his progress in rehab, and manage his blood pressure and meds. Zoe wasn't with me. I wasn't there for long. I didn't sit there and talk. I fulfilled my obligations. Not much more. He never demanded more. Every visit was silent. He occasionally attempted to strike up a conversation. At times, he just thanked me. On other occasions, he would open his mouth to speak. Perhaps a recollection, perhaps an apology. However, I would refocus the discussion on the nurse's notes or paperwork. The image of my mother was vanished, completing her sentence. Additionally, I felt as though the home which had formerly been filled with unseen laws and judgment had lost its ability to control me. When Jenna did turn up, it was infrequently. There were a lot of excuses made. Ryan's school problems are causing me stress. Mason is ill with a cold. I'm overburdened. I would have rolled my eyes or muttered something abrasive in the past. Now, though, I just watched her from afar. She was falling apart. She was now realizing the effects of her decisions, not because someone had wronged her. I was strangely not angry. I was at ease. Meanwhile, Zoe was doing really well. She was practicing with fresh vigor after receiving a nomination from her piano teacher for a regional competition. I didn't mention her grandparents, and she stopped asking about them. At last, our small world, just the two of us, was stable. However, mending has a peculiar way of creating space for fresh inquiries, and Zoe was about to ask me a question I hadn't anticipated. On a soggy Saturday morning, Zoe rushed into the kitchen. Excitation caused her cheeks to flush. She was waving a folded piece of paper. Look, Mom, I was chosen. She handed the paper to me. Examine the bold heading. Well done. You have been selected to compete in the regional youth piano competition on behalf of Brookhaven. I raised my head. My heart is swelled. Zoe, that's amazing. She smiled, biting her bottom lip as shyly as she often did when she was feeling really happy. I was not expecting to make it. I stooped to give her a firm embrace. I've always known you would. Later that night, the paper was still on the coffee table while we sat in the living room drinking mugs of cocoa, with a look I hadn't seen in a long time. Zoe turned to face me, cautious, considerate, and maybe even torn. Mom, would Grandpa want to know in your opinion? I stopped talking about the competition while lowering my cup. Quickly, she added, I'm not expressing a desire to see him. I simply reasoned that perhaps hearing it might cheer him up. I took a while to respond. The idea wasn't out of the question. During the previous trips, Robert had been reserved, thoughtful, and even repentant. And in spite of everything, Zoe's heart continued to be open. I gently brushed a lock of hair behind her ear and added, I'll give it some thought. However, only if you're genuinely comfortable with it. After giving a slow nod, she moved to the piano and started playing the selection she had made for the contest. I knew what I had to do because of the graceful and deliberate way her fingers worked, filling the house with a delicate tune that made it seem like time had frozen. For me, closure would have to be earned if it were ever to come for her. A week later, I got a surprise letter in the mail. It was typed officially on legal letterhead rather than handwritten. It came from the parole officer for my mother. The letter said that because of her age, good behavior, and successful completion of court-mandated rehabilitation, Linda had been given early release after serving 1 year of her 5-year sentence. She had asked for a supervised voluntary encounter with Zoe and was now under close surveillance. The letter made it clear that no communication would take place without our consent. Prior to bringing it up to Zoe, I sat with it in my hands for about an hour. My dear, I said softly, Grandma was let go early. If you agree she would like to meet to apologize, now is not the time to make a decision. Zoe stared at the piano keys in silence. She then gave a nod. I'd want to know what she thinks. Robert was the first to arrive that Saturday afternoon. He was older and quieter than I recalled, and he was now using a cane to walk. A dark automobile arrived into the driveway a few minutes later. Linda came out with her parole officer, who waited outside as she made her way slowly to the home. She walked in and looked at Zoe. She appeared smaller than I had recalled, eyes sunken with what may have been shame, a face pallid, shoulders slightly bent. With her hands by her sides, Zoe stood rigidly close to the piano. After taking a trembling breath, Linda said in a hushed voice, Zoe, I came here to give you the most heartfelt apology I have ever given. Zoe remained still. I caused you pain. I caused you pain that no youngster should ever experience. Since I was irate, domineering, and harsh that night, I've been thinking about it every day. You're not to blame for any of it. Her voice broke. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but I had to tell you straight out. I apologize. Quiet. Next. Why did you treat me like that when I didn't do anything wrong? Zoe questioned, hardly raising her voice above a whisper. Linda cast her gaze downward. I interpreted submission as stillness, and her lips quivered, due to the fact that I spoiled Mason and Ryan. Additionally, I thought I could exploit your silence. I was completely mistaken. Robert moved in closer. His eyes were shining with tears. Both of you failed. You and your mom. Our parenting has been influenced by our pride. I gave Zoe a quick look. Her face was unreadable. She then moved carefully to the piano and took a seat. Once she had been reprimanded for wanting to practice, and now she put her fingers on the keys and started to play Nocturne in E-flat major. Like a gentle breeze, the melodies drifted through the room. Zoe glanced up as the song ended and whispered softly, Thank you for the apology. She then faced me. Should they attend the competition? I nodded, blinking in amazement. If you want them there, then sure. Whispering. Linda wiped her cheeks. Both of you, thank you. As they departed. At the door, Linda turned to face me. Mira, you did a good job raising her. Better than either of you ever were. For the first time, the pain they used to feel was not evoked by those words. They did not feel like a sign of approval. They simply had an honest feeling. It had been a year since Zoe had performed in our living room for Linda and Robert. It was a bright Sunday day in the springtime now. In our garden, a big table was arranged with mismatched chairs and a flowered fabric covering it. However, that was irrelevant. Who filled them was important. At the head of the table, Zoe, who was now 12, sat with pride. Beside her plate is a framed copy of her music certificate. She had taken part in more than just the local piano competition. She received a referral to the nearby music school after placing second. Sitting peacefully in a deck chair, Robert appeared more relaxed and powerful than I had seen him in a long time. He was walking every day and playing a little golf again. Linda, who sat calmly next to him, stopped attempting to steer the discussion. Rather, she paid attention. When someone talked to her, she smiled softly. She was softer now, molded by humility rather than time. "Okay." "Zoe," Robert smiled warmly as he inquired, "have you chosen the piece for your next recital?" Zoe nodded and took a drink of her lemonade. "Indeed. I will perform Clair de Lune by Debussy." Linda's eyes gleamed as she gave a little smile. "That's a lovely decision, my love. Similar to you." As the air pulled at the napkins, I carried a fruit plate out of the kitchen and placed it on the table. We had made great progress. We remembered what had transpired. We didn't act as though it was unimportant. In spite of this, we managed to proceed with respect, clarity, and limits. "Will Mason and Ryan also be attending?" With her hair brushed back, Zoe inquired. "Yeah," I said, looking towards the driveway. "They ought to arrive shortly." Robert had taken on a more active role as a grandpa in the months after Linda's discharge. He assisted Jenna with her son's constructive, non-aggressive disciplining. Jenna had also started to alter gradually while being monitored by the court and receiving counseling. The doorbell rang. Jenna and the boys were standing there when I answered it. "We apologize for being late." Jenna spoke lines of struggle and exhaustion visible on her face. Shoes caused Ryan and Mason to lose their minds. The twins gave me a kind greeting. More than a year ago, I could have imagined. Jenna sat next to me on the porch stairs after lunch as the children played in the yard. "I realize I was terrible that day," she muttered. "I didn't succeed in protecting yours. I was just attempting to defend mine." I remained silent for a while. Then I answered. "Now what counts is that we reared them with love and accountability, and that we safeguard them all. It doesn't harm." She blinked back tears as she nodded. "I'm making an effort. I am aware." Through the open windows, the sound of Zoe playing the piano could be heard inside. This time she was just playing freely and joyfully. There was no act. I was no longer reminded of anguish by the song. I was reminded of all that we had conquered. The sun was sinking behind the trees, shining a golden glow across our lawn. Zoe was standing close to the piano, delicately stroking the keys. Dessert was finished by everybody. Quiet talk had replaced the laughter. The air was still filled with the aroma of lemon cake. With a kind yet confident attitude, Zoe gazed up at us. After music school, she added, "I've been thinking a lot. My career goal is to teach piano." Startled yet quite proud, I blinked. She went on to demonstrate to them how music can inspire courage, saying, "I want to teach children like myself." A warm, sentimental silence descended upon the table. Linda grabbed for her water glass, her hand shaking. Robert only grinned, his eyes wide. Jenna covered her heart with her hand. Getting up, I approached Zoe and put my arms over her shoulders. "You'll make a fantastic educator." "Because you're already courageous," I whispered. I took a step back and allowed the music take over as she settled in and started to play a gentle flowing serenity. Every letter appeared to contain a fragment of our adventure. Anger, grief, forgiving, and power all combined into one. I didn't feel the urge to glance back for the first time in years. I didn't bear the burden of unresolved issues or previous scars. I had kept my kid safe. I'd stood up for her. I had discovered who I was in the process. Although forgiveness had released us from the bonds of the past, it had not erased it. And we had made something new in that freedom, a family characterized by change rather than blood. Truth and the will to develop. Zoe was playing the last note. The sound reverberated softly into the early evening sky, and I realized we were at last at home. Remember to like the video if you were moved by this narrative. It genuinely enables us to connect with additional great viewers like you. Have sentiments, ideas, or maybe a comparable experience? We would be delighted to hear from you. Please leave a remark below. What you say matters. Additionally, if you haven't already, please click the bell symbol and subscribe so that you don't miss any more soul-stirring stories. I appreciate you watching. Remember that telling the truth is the first step towards healing.